Being here. One more day of content. We're going to kick off with a presentation from Mark Lieberman, who is one of our generous sponsors. He is the CEO of Via Media. He is the chairman of Place Media, and coincidentally, he's also the founder of TiVo Research. So it's kind of like TV everywhere, we have Mark everywhere. In fact, if you've been reading MediaPost, he's also a contributing writer. So you've read Mark as well. But to kick it off, we're going to start with a pre-roll in the nature of the business.
Welcome to Media in the 21st Century, a virtual mountain of advertising opportunities, but growing more complex every day. So how can a video provider or advertiser scale this seemingly insurmountable while ensuring consistent, profitable sales levels? That's where we come in. Welcome to Via Media. Via Media has been helping both our cable company partners and advertiser customers negotiate the new media landscape for over a decade. Our innovative, turnkey, total solutions for local, regional, and national advertising cable sales offices have earned Via Media a reputation as the industry partner for local advertising. Simply stated, we place television commercials effectively and efficiently where your customers are watching. Entrusted with the ad sales efforts of more than 60 MVPD cable company partners across the U.S., and with more than 10,000 local advertiser relationships delivering more than 1 million local ads each day to over 70 markets in over 32 states. Well, you begin to see how Via Media is the leading independent cable advertiser operator in the country. So how have we achieved that status? Innovation, customized solutions, and state-of-the-art technology are the cornerstones of Via Media's success. Innovations like our Video Operations Center, with a media management system benefiting both advertisers and MVPDs, and built-in efficiencies such as automated proposals, streamlined spot trafficking and copy distribution, even as-run spot reporting. And our Business Intelligence Genie reporting helps cable company MVPDs monitor and measure the performance of inventory across their entire system. Now that is big. Our innovations in technology have earned respect and recognition within the industry as well. And while we're proud of our past accomplishments, our eye is firmly on the future, developing more solutions to better serve our clients' growing interests. Place Media is the supply-side programmatic platform for television, giving our supply partners control and access to ready demand, improved yield, and increased rates. Our automated platform gives cable networks, MVPDs, and broadcasters access to demand through a single integration. So whether your needs are local, regional, or national, Via Media has the proven ability to turn the media landscape into a mountain of profits. Via Media, your partner in advertising sales.
All right, morning everybody. How are you? Let's see, I have a few slides that I'll go through. I think the video captures a lot of what we do. Is this working, or should I just not use the mic?
Either way. Either one should work now.
Okay. Anyway, so I'm going to go through a few slides, and then if there's opportunity for questions later, I can handle any of your questions, given that it's a Saturday morning. So in summary is what Via Media does, and again the video captured it nicely, is that we run the local cable advertising for 60 different cable companies, or MVPDs. And as you know, what happens in program negotiations between a cable network and an MVPD, an ESPN, Turner, Discovery with a Comcast, Charter, WOW, Google Fiber, as MVPD keeps those 2 to 3 minutes an hour to do local advertising. And if you are a MVPD, either you will run it yourself, and the big boys do that themselves, Comcast, Charter, Time Warner, Cox, Cablevision, or they'll outsource it, and we're the largest independent outsourcing company. When I mean independent is that we're not a cable company, we don't sell video subscriptions, we don't sell telephony, we don't sell broadband. And we have about 60 MVPDs, as the video said, in 71 different DMAs across the country, 32 different states. We drop salespeople, our own account executives, in all those markets. So we have about 250 sales executives in those 32 states, and they're the ones that are knocking on the door to sell local advertising, to place into those 2 to 3 minutes an hour. We have about 12,000 now advertiser relationships. These are local advertisers, regional advertisers. And so we have a decentralized sales force, but a centralized sales operation, where everything is run out of Lexington, Kentucky. So we have about 80 people in Lexington, Kentucky that run our VOC, our Video Operations Center, where we have also marketing and research. And we insert about 1 million ads every day. Those are linear ads. And we also have a fairly sophisticated business intelligence platform. You saw, we call it BIG, Business Intelligence Genie, which we put in the hands of our 250 account executives so they know what inventory is available and how they go out and actually sell. And as I'll talk about in a moment, we not only focus on linear, but we focus on impression-based selling as well. Not just for linear TV, but for addressable TV, as well as online, so that we have a full multi-screen solution. And then a couple of years ago, we launched Place Media, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a second. Some of our MVPD partners, and you saw some of those logos before in the video, include Frontier Communications, CenturyLink, Verizon Fios. We actually run a system in Indiana for Time Warner Cable, as well as Google Fiber, and I'll come back to Google Fiber in a sec. Just a map here in terms of where you can see where we are throughout the entire United States. And again, I think what makes us unique is that we've figured out how to have a decentralized sales force, decentralized sales operation, but to run it from a centralized center in Kentucky. And I think that makes us unique. Even the other larger MVPDs, they're running it for one MVPD. We run this for 60 different MVPDs, and we've had to figure out how to integrate into 60 different technical operations and infrastructure for those MVPDs around the country. If you think about us, if we were a cable company, we'd be the 4th largest cable company in the country behind these other 3. And the 2 different color codes here are both the owned and operated, so green is owned and operated, and then the blue or light blue is where they actually run the operations for others. So as I said, we're independent, and we're the largest independent. The largest third-party outsourced solution out there is Comcast. And one thing that not many people know is that while Comcast has their 21, 22 million households, is that they also run the cable operations, the sales operations for 15 million others. So for their competitors, they run the sales operations for everybody from AT&T to RCN to WOW. So in a place like Chicago, for instance, Comcast will control 100% of the cable operations. But we fancy ourselves as independent because within those 2 to 3 minutes an hour, it's not something a lot of people know about. Within those 2 to 3 minutes an hour, about 20 to 25% is running the marketing spots on behalf of our MVPDs. And those are the promotional spots that you'll often see when they're promoting triple play or new broadband or the like. And they're doing that in competition with someone like Comcast in that particular market. And so our MVPD partners like our independence, like the fact that we're going to run their marketing spots and they don't want to put that in the hands of their competitor like a Comcast. In terms of our technology, and this is screenshots from our operations center down in Kentucky, is that we're the largest instance of Strata. Strata is the order and entry system for the industry. We're the largest instance for Imagine's Novar traffic and billing system, where you can see here it's 165 different ad zones, 71 markets into 9,000 networks across the country, 5 time zones. So we go all the way from the East Coast all the way to Hawaii, because we run Hawaiian television telecoms ad operations. And then, as I said, about 1 million ads a day, or over 300 million ads during the course of the year in 2015. And then we launched, and again, I'll talk about Google Fiber in a moment. And this year, we're also launching an OTT solution. Many of our MVPD partners, and you've read about some, are launching either their TV Everywhere or their OTT solution. Well, how do you do that from a technology standpoint? And so we actually issued an RFP about 6 months ago. We had 10 different ad tech companies from Freewheel, DoubleClick, NVIDIA, Black Arrow, Ericsson, Adobe, etc. submit RFPs to us, come in, make presentations, and we're about to announce in the next few weeks who we've selected to be our ad tech partner to support and integrate into our Kentucky operations to run the OTT and TV Everywhere solutions for our MVPDs. But as you guys have been talking about for the last couple of days, I just got down last night, obviously the world is shifting to much more of an impression-based solution and to much more of an over-the-top solution. And this year is going to be a seminal year, because this year will be the first time that digital overtakes TV advertising. And that really is critical, because the advertisers, whether they're national advertisers, regional advertisers, or local advertisers, 12,000 for us and hundreds of thousands across the country, they're looking at this every day, is how can they best reach their consumer? And so we're looking at that as well. And so one of the things that we've done is we have, I don't know, it doesn't look like all the bullets showed up on this, but we have, as I said, 12,000 advertiser relationships. We have 250 of our account executives who own that trusted relationship with those brands in the local markets. And those local advertisers will say, well, where should we be advertising? We trust you for television, but the world is increasingly more online. And so what we did a few years ago is we started to launch our online solution. So what we'll do is, we not only sell cable television, but we also will go out and we'll acquire inventory on the pre-roll video exchanges so that we can do both pre-roll, in-banner. We've developed with a partner a mobile solution, so there's a scrolling text box at the bottom of your smartphone. You can click to actually get more information about the brand, the local auto advertiser. And who are the advertisers that we work with? I should have mentioned that before, those 12,000. About 40% is automotive, a big category for the industry generally, obviously for us as well, but also political. As Jeff said, I happen to have been a contributor in yesterday's MediaPost talking about the Trump effect for political advertising. Well, political is huge for our industry, or huge, I guess, as Trump would say. And the reality is that while Trump has gotten $2 billion plus of earned media, free media, is that 16 other candidates during the primaries had to break through the clutter. So we actually blew through our budget this year in terms of generating revenue for political advertising. And why political advertising for cable? As President Obama approved in 2012 in Ohio, it's not just going after the swing state, it's actually using data, pending data sets, donor registration data sets, to append that to viewing data, to go after that swing voter on the swing network, on the swing program. And that actually proved the point in Ohio and won him the election, many people say. So the power of cable is to be able to do local and geo-targeting and append these other databases. From 2012 to 2016, political advertising for cable will grow about 45%. For broadcast, it'll grow about 17, 18%. Again, because of the power of geo-targeting. So we actually have a huge investment in political advertising, and it turns out we're in some of the swing counties and the swing states. So it's been a banner year for us, and it'll continue to be a banner year as we go into the presidential elections. And obviously there's probably about, I think there's 30 gubernatorial elections up, 30 some odd senatorial elections, and then all the congressional as well as the local state elections. So cable is going to actually carry a lot of the political advertising, so that's going to be big for us. And we focus not just on traditional cable, but also online and multi-screen. What this has done is it's required us to retrain our sales force, because it's a sales force that knows how to sell traditional linear. Well, when you're talking about online, you're selling on an impression basis. So over the last couple of years, we've made a big investment in retraining a sales force on how do you sell on an impression basis, how do you sell on an audience basis, because online you're trying to reach a particular audience. Political, it's swing voters. In brands, it's whatever the brand wants to go after. And that brings me to what we're doing with Google, which has been fascinating. So we've been working with Google for about 2 years. We soft launched about a year ago, and then in last August, we did a hard launch in places like Kansas City, and we're rolling out, and where they're rolling out in Provo, Austin, and we're their exclusive ad partner. And that required us to also not just retrain our sales force, but to integrate, and they're using DoubleClick as the ad serving network, but to integrate DoubleClick with our order entry system and our traffic and billing system. And what this is it's actually using Google set-top boxes. And this is an unusual business model for Google. Google Fiber is an MVPD, albeit a next generation MVPD, but they're rolling trucks, they're digging up the tulips, they're laying fiber, 1 gig in, 1 gig out. They're putting in their own set-top boxes, Android-based set-top boxes. And as their ad partner, we actually have our salespeople in places like Kansas City who are selling on an impression basis, on an audience basis. The currency there, because we're using not RentTrack data, we're not using, we are correlating it to Nielsen data, but we're using actual Google data in which we're taking in their set-top box data, and we're able to sell on an impression basis and only charge on an impression basis. And this means we go out to the local advertisers and say, what kind of audience do you want to reach? They then place the ads. We can see the impression load in real time, and then we only charge on a cost per view basis, if you will. It's automated. We're using their data, and the roadmap will include being able to integrate this into mobile products and then to eventually append other databases. Right now, the data that we're using is only the tuning data from those set-top boxes. But this, I believe, is the future of television in the way that television is going to be bought and sold. And this is an example of what Google is doing, but they've thrown down the gauntlet, and others are making major investment in broadband, and you see that every day, whether it's Comcast, AT&T, Verizon that are making that investment in broadband. But the opportunity here is, from an advertising standpoint, once you have that IP type infrastructure, is to be able to use advanced ad serving technologies like DoubleClick, which were really obviously focused on digital, but they've made modifications per our specifications to be able to integrate it into a television environment. So if you take what we're doing with VOS, or Via Media Online sales at multi-screen, and Google Fiber, is that we also, like the rest of the industry, are pivoting because of the fragmentation, and you all have been talking about this, is because of that fragmentation, how do you reach that audience in a highly fragmented environment? And that's what we're focusing on when it comes to programmatic. And you all have been looking at this, and the statistics are, whether you believe them or not, programmatic is growing by leaps and bounds. If you take a look at some of the eMarketer stats, they predict by 2019 it'll be about 14% of the overall television market will be sold programmatically. Depends how you define programmatic, as you all know. But the reality is that television and digital video have to go hand in hand. And this is an old Nielsen graphic that we like to use, where it talks about light blue is audience-based buying and the gray is programmatic. And they start to converge when you're talking about digital video and you're talking about television coming together. And then really the two go hand in hand. And this is a little bit of a busy slide, but the evolution of programmatic video is that it really starts in linear, and then eventually it goes to addressable and VOD and OTT, and then it goes to complete omni-channel. So a lot of the programmatic companies, there's not a lot, but the programmatic companies like us, we're focusing on how do we ride that wave from just traditional linear to OTT and TV everywhere. And this is a busy Lumascape type of slide, but we see ourselves right in the middle as the SSP with a couple of the other players you can see, working on both the TV side, linear TV side, as well as on the digital DSP side. And so what we want is we said that we need to be able to maintain the growth here and to be able to focus on the precision of advertising using impression-based buying and selling. So we developed and we launched a couple of years ago a company called Place Media, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Via Media. And we have a patent pending system that allows us to, using data, to predict where we're going to have the highest propensity for clearing ads. So on the right, on the middle here, is that that we use data. We use both Rentrack, or I guess now ComScore data, as well as Nielsen data, and then we integrate that with first-party and third-party data sets, whether it's from Epsilon, Polk, etc. And so we use that data, and then we bring in inventory. And the inventory we have is on the MVPD side, which is those 2 to 3 minutes an hour. We have about 35 million households from various providers, and this is in some of them listed. But then we also bring in the national network inventory. Those are the other 15 minutes from a number of national cable networks. So we take all that inventory, we combine it with the data, and then we have an online system that allows either our users in-house or outsourcing it to third parties, whether they be agencies or trade desks, to be able to access that system and access the 500 different audience segments, 500 plus audience segments, to identify who they want to advertise to. So one of the other unique things that we've done is that we've opened up our APIs to the system so that we're now integrating with 12 different digital DSPs, so it can all be done on an automated basis. So if I'm an agency and I log into one of those digital DSPs systems, their user interface is that they can define the audience, and it's all based upon indexes, so it's index-based buying and selling, and they then have the ability to buy online through that digital DSP, and through that same window to be able to access our inventory and to buy whatever programs have a high index for that particular audience that you're trying to advertise to. And there's 3 types of business models here. As I mentioned, it's the APIs that we've opened up. It's a self-serve, so they can access our system if they want and do it all themselves, or it's managed service, in which we're using our system on their behalf to go out and make those sales. And here's a screenshot from how the system works, if you will. If we were online, I'd give you a demo of it, is that you can actually log onto the system, say, here's how much money I want to spend on my campaign, here's the CPM that I want to pay, and then at the same time I can identify the audiences that I'm trying to advertise to, women 25 to 34 who own a luxury car, make $100,000 a year. Go find wherever they are. It'll show me, and you can see the lower left, it'll show you how the system indexes, and then it'll give you the whole breakdown for the media campaign. You can accept it, and it goes out and makes an automated buy. And so from a pivot standpoint from traditional linear, we're focused on at Via Media, we're focused on 4 things, just to sum up. We're focused on, 1 is what we're doing cross-media with our VOS, Via Media Online sales, our multi-screen sales. 2nd, what we're doing with digital, with Google Fiber, rolling out with them across the country. 3rd, our OTT initiative, which we're launching this year. And then lastly, what we're doing with Place Media. So it's an interesting time to be in the television industry as the advertisers are demanding that we actually focus on more accountability and using the advances in digital to be able to bring that to television. So with that, Jeff, I don't know if I have any time for questions, but happy to answer any questions, and if not, I'll be here for the morning so we can do it as a sidebar.
You answered the question I was going to ask. Are you going to be here the rest of the morning so people can chat with you?
I was going to be here the rest of the morning so people can chat with me afterwards.
Perfect answer. So thank you so much, Mark. He will be here the rest of the morning, so chat with him whenever. I'm going to hand over to Steve, and we'll get the rest of the program going.
Thanks. Good morning, everybody. And forward and start us off with our keynote conversation. We're going to start by speaking with Erica Schmidt, who I think many of you know. She's the Managing Director of North America at Cadreon. She's been there for over a year, coming before that spending several years at Aegis's Amnet trading desk, especially overseeing Europe. Today we're going to be drilling a little bit into the nature of the deal, and especially moving across platforms and some of the hurdles and the challenges encountered with really moving video across these various channels, and what it really takes to get a data-driven deal done. Wayne?
Okay. Terrific. Glad we're here. And so we want to get into a little more specifics regarding perhaps, some of the networks as regards to, their initiatives when it comes to data-driven deals. So right now, the upfronts is starting to move a little bit and, into the promises that the networks have made. They pretty much have offered that they have all these capabilities. they mention it during their upfront presentations, and people like NBC, for instance, they came up with, and they kind of signaled this at least, Eric and I have talked about this, that, they came up and offered like a mix of lots of different shows, unlike the way they've done in the past. And they, in this regard, they mixed, NBC shows with Bravo shows, with E shows, and that's sort of, to a lot of people, to traditional media executives, they were a little upset at that, but digital people kind of like that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because that's the world we're talking about. And so, but then also, when it comes to data-driven deals, we want to take a look at, the usual things concerns that people have: measurement, cross-platform, and of course, any of those real programmatic offerings. So, I just want to. So, Erica Schmidt is EVP of Managing Director of IPG's Cadreon. She's been doing this for a while. She had a previous background in doing a lot of digital media in Europe and search, right? You did search, and so I just want to ask, I guess, considering the upfronts going on right now and what the announcements that the networks have made. So is this the start of the true things to come, or is this just a teased, at least by some of the networks, NBC, Fox, Turner, that that marketers want to step up to the plate and they want the networks to get more involved?
I think, and we talked about this, Wayne, in preparation for today's conversation, that, wow, there's an echo on this microphone,
really?
So I can hear myself. It's a little distracting. I apologize. We talked about this when we were preparing for today, that the networks took an interesting play this year when it came to focusing on audiences, right? And I think NBC was the most foot forward on that focus of audiences, as you just mentioned, where they packaged their content on the basis of 5 or 6 macro audience segments, and really talked about this is the way to think differently about how to plan your buys and to engage with us. And some of that is underpinned with data, right? So we know that in our conversations with NBCU, they are perhaps the most foot forward when it comes to starting to think about what data arsenal do they have, what type of data do they need to go and collect, and how do they leverage that to then enable advertisers to buy certain types of audiences or data segments, and really the reason they're doing that is to enrich the value of the buy, right? And I think they have to do that because we know that the rating points are, there's a dearth of quality programming that's going to deliver the same rating points, so they need to find a way to continue.
And they have 14 networks to sell.
Yeah.
So a lot more than anyone else, pretty much.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but it's a way of helping them to maintain the value of their inventory. Is really the way that I read it. But what's also interesting about that is as we, part of Cadreon being part of media brands, and then of course our sister relationship with Magna Global, who go to market in the upfront season, is the conversations with the networks is also interesting because it's not just about the linear TV inventory that they're starting to package up as part of the upfront. It's about the digital inventory. And just yesterday, I was having a conversation with our lead investment folks at Magna, David Cohn and Danny Benowitz, and they're like, there's going to be a lot of digital inventory that we're going to work to ensure is programmatically deliverable. I was like, this is fantastic. And they're like, we like that you're glass half full, but our glass half empty is there's just not enough that we could be buying in the standard TV practice. So it's a market that's really changing. The pace of change is slow still, though, particularly in the TV market. But the upfronts are an indicator that everyone's thinking about how we move forward in the future.
And when it comes to, so you said there's not enough around. Is that the digital inventory that you like to buy?
No, the TV inventory.
The TV inventory is not enough.
I mean, obviously we saw
and obviously the digital inventory is not going to make up for it through their apps or their full episode players or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah. So.
But even digital inventory, I mean, it depends on, of course, we fall into all kinds of barriers with definitions. But, if you think about OTT and Hulu, for example, Hulu sold out for the month of June. And that's just absolutely phenomenal. Now, we know why they're sold out, because there's not as much quality inventory in the broadcast market to be buying, and people are doing TV extensions or thinking about TV replacement, and Hulu is a way of doing that. But the fact that they're oversold in June is just interesting.
And we did an conference, and some of the senior media people were talking about that even Google preferred. They can't get enough of even that inventory. And some people don't even equate that necessarily being maybe on the same level as, premium traditional linear TV programming.
Right.
So you're saying that there's just even with the lower amount of rating points that digital can't even make up for the areas that they want to be in.
Well, I mean, it was interesting because Jamie was on the stage yesterday and talking about, what we all do in the programmatic or advanced TV space about like the currency of things, right? So, and using the traditional currency for trading, that's absolutely the case. But when you have a client who's a massive TV advertiser and they are used to knowing exactly what they're going to get in terms of their reach and frequency on a buy, and you say, well, we're going to do that with a replacement for digital, even if you have the right metrics in play, that's very difficult for them to say, okay, that this is an easy replacement for us, or that there is a one-for-one type of relationship between, airing during a break for Sunday Night Football and, catch up on Hulu. Like they just still can't really, we don't have the right currency in play other than saying, okay, we're going to start with planning from an audience perspective, and we're going to find a standard measure across everything.
Any other sort of long-term measurement concerns? Tons. Tons.
There are, but I think, from our perspective, and it's really lovely to be here to hear everybody talking this week about the challenges, but also the forward thinking that everyone is doing. But, we just met as a leadership community at Cadreon earlier this week, which feels like a month ago, even though it was only on Monday and Tuesday, and we were really thinking about, how do we continue to push the envelope? How do we continue to package things up for both our agency partners and ultimately our clients in something that's palatable as well as compelling? And measurement's a big piece of that, right? Right. And the fact that we may want to take a screen agnostic approach to find an audience wherever they are, and to get the action within those environments that is going to drive real business outcomes is really where we're going. So the closer we could get to closing the loop on anything that we do is the rigor that we're putting behind things. So every single advanced TV campaign that we run has a massive measurement aspect to it, right. And it might be, if you're doing household addressability, what impact does that have on footfall to a dealership, or even ultimately sales for an automotive? Or if you're a quick service restaurant, how do we also then start to look at point of sale data associated with the exposures that we have on TV?
What's your view on the quality of data? I mean, that you're getting, maybe from your clients, maybe any of the CRM data. I mean, which is still, obviously important to this.
I think, a few years ago, it was helping clients to understand just the nature of programmatic, and you show them the Lumascape, or the vomit chart, as a friend of mine calls it, with, all those different logos and landscapes, and, it seems unwieldy and difficult to navigate. And we've now evolved in terms of the way that what our clients are asking for or putting at the top of their priority list, and that's really about data. So we find even advertisers that you wouldn't think would take a big play in the DMP space are starting to take that play. So in the CPG category, right. Which is somewhat like, well, what CRM data do you have, or what data do you have in your arsenal? To, of course, where you would expect it to be a lot of data points in the insurance and the financial categories. And the more that those advertisers start to get their own data houses in order, the better the activation that we're going to have on their behalf, because it could be, from a CRM perspective, how do you translate that into addressability, right? So, right. For example, an automotive is going to have some sort of arsenal of data that knows when leases are running out, or, warranties are coming to an end, or there's a standard, lifespan of ownership of a vehicle. Well, then how do we then go and re-attract those audiences when they want to buy a new car? So it's thinking differently about the data sets and helping the advertisers to understand what is the most important data that they should be activating. I still truly believe that first party data is the wealthiest and the richest of data sets, but it also really, for us, especially when we think about, because we don't just think about advanced TV, we think about holistically what we're doing and enabling programmatically, but we have a lot of conversations now with our advertisers about how they can come to the table with another advertiser to build data cooperatives, right? So they're not in competitive spaces, but they may have analogous audiences, or they may in fact have things that help them to close the loop. So matching a CPG with a grocer, for example, and loyalty card data. And it doesn't mean that that data is going to be open to the entire ecosystem, but if they could be doing an exchange on that data, that's really, really what I think what the new data ecosystem becomes.
Do you have any concern of, sometimes I do, when you take a look at some of the data in silos by itself? You know, if you know, Verizon has very great first-party data that they want to use, you know, might they want to see, you know, what the category is versus where they are, you know, where AT&T is or Sprint? You know, are they working sometimes in a vacuum in any of these deals?
I absolutely think so. So everybody, so, you know, we talk about helping our advertisers to get their data in play. We talked about the upfront and folks like NBCU, you know, we know obviously that they've made a DMP selection and they're unifying that across, you know, all ends of their business, not just how they're selling in their inventory, but even how they're thinking about how they attract audiences for viewership. And I've lost my train of thought.
That's
so
okay.
we know that they're thinking about those data plays,
right?
But I forget your question.
Oh,
I did lose my train of thought.
basically, are they working in silos?
They are working, so that's
yeah.
the point that I was trying to get to. So everybody is thinking about how they're pulling their data together, but there's not a common means by which everybody is doing that. For us, in terms of what we do on behalf of our advertisers, yes, of course, I'm really keen and interested in Comcast data, and you know, they're working towards that on NBCU front, or I'm really keen to understand the Dish and the DirecTV data, but I don't want those prepackaged segments, or you know, they're going to aggregate and build those data sets and those audiences to ensure that they're maximizing their yield and maximizing the value proposition. What's much more important to me is I'm going to push a segment to them and say, this is what I want. I don't need you to come and tell me what I should be buying. And that's the distinction. So yes, there is lots of silos. It's incumbent upon us as working on behalf of our advertisers to be able to say, let's take the data to the party and be more prescriptive about what we want, rather than having it
it would seem tough to like make the transition, even in upfront, where people might look and say, you know, what are they getting CPM wise? How come I got, you know, what were the increases? Should I get lower? It must be tough to sort of make that transition, you know.
It's absolutely going to be very tough in the TV marketplace. It's even still tough in the digital marketplace. So as I mentioned, we met together as a leadership community this week at Cadreon, and one of the things that I wanted to do is for my teams to showcase the work to our wider leadership community, because it's important to understand the pulse points of what's going on in the day-to-day work. And we were talking about one of our advertisers who's also a CBG, who is addicted to TV. They've gone through, and that's fine. They've built those models, and they understand the impact of television on their bottom line through their mixed media models. But nevertheless, they're going through a transition of starting to invest more in digital, and they have high, they want it cheap because everybody has a mouth. They want also to make sure that they're reaching in demo, and by the way, they want it to be viewable. And when you put those three things together, those are three different KPIs, right? So what we've been trying to do is to start to educate them around, what are the most important things to be focusing on, and looking at the supply. So we build a lot of private marketplaces, which is what we are doing now also in the TV ecosystem, and saying to both the advertiser as well as the publisher, guess what? When we run our moat across that, you're not viewable. And they're just absolutely surprised about that. And so it then becomes a dialogue, and it's a different dialogue than when you traditionally have with the publisher, which is, I now have more data points that shows about the value of your inventory than you may perceive it to be. And that's what's going to change the TV marketplace is having that conversation about the data that I'm bringing to the table and the validation that data provides about whether or not your content is delivering the audiences we want to.
And so therefore that they bring more information to the publisher that I don't need your pressure or your push here that I need to spend more or less because I know where the metrics are and where the scale is and how I can make them. Okay, that sounds good. I guess the one of the things I guess you were interested in is all about cross-platform, when it comes to some of these deals. And so how do you think that's going to work? I mean, even with NBC or anyone when they do cross-platform deals, between their traditional linear and their digital media sites.
Yeah, so it's really, really early days for that, right? So as I mentioned, we want to take a screen-agnostic, audience-centric, data-driven approach towards our planning and our buying and our measurements. That's an aspiration, right? So you could cobble together. You could cobble together those things and find a uniform metric and a means by which you build a plan that shows it's still channel allocation, where you do those things and then optimize those as much as you can in real time or near real time in TV, and look at the impact of those types of things. But it's still really, really early days, and until the planning paradigm shift in terms of truly audience centric and data driven, it's going to be difficult to make those complex multi-channel deals with the media owners like in NBCU, for example. So right now, they're just parceling out their inventory on the basis of what's going to enable them to to maximize their value. And it's not really based on, as much as they talk about it, it's not really based on audiences. It's just like, I need to sell.
They are sales guys after all.
Yeah, they're great sales guys.
How would you evaluate Fox, Turner, Viacom, some of the others who have really stuck their nose out and made an emphasis to do some data-driven deals? Guaranteed.
Yeah, well, and that's also the thing, right? So. In our conversations with all these folks, and like I mentioned, it's moving in the right direction, but it's still very much early days. But the fact that they're putting some money behind where their mouth is, in the sense of, I'm willing to provide guarantees, is a huge thing for us, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what the advertiser still needs, that guarantee. And when you go and you say, okay, so this is this bright, shiny object, this is what we do on advanced TV, this is how we augment your reach on your base plan, whatever our storytelling is based on that advertiser, they still want their traditional TV parameters in play around guarantees. So we need the networks to be able to take those types of positions with us and again put some skin in the game.
Got it.
But that's very difficult for them, right? So even in our conversations with NBC, they're like, we'll surface this inventory to you programmatically, including some of their supply on the broadcast front, obviously for scatter. I'm like, but there's no guarantees. And
really? They said there's no guarantees?
Yeah.
Okay. But Fox said there was on strategic targets. So some in Turner too?
Perhaps, I can't recall.
Oh, you remember? Okay.
I mean, we've got a great team who are going and negotiating that, and it's very much at the beginning of the upfront, and we're cascading through our list.
Sure. Okay, good. I want to open up to questions, and Joe Mandisi has one.
Hi, Joe.
Hi, Erica. So, this is actually a question for the whole week, but you're the last up, so I'm going to ask you it. And I kind of asked Jamie about it during the interview the other day, which is, I don't really understand the merits of getting the data directly from the suppliers right now. And the question I have is whether it's just that you're encouraging them to move that next step forward, or whether you take their data really seriously. And the reason I mention that is you've had high index data for a long time. What makes this better? You had Scan America going back to the 80s, Apollo in the 90s, we've had Nielsen Catalina, we've had TRA, we've had lots of players come up that could really empirically link TV exposure to product and category stuff. What makes it better when it's coming from network TV suppliers?
Well, I think it's a great question, and I think we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier in the conversation, which is everybody needs to have their data house in order, and that's just, it might just be because I'm passionate about programmatic and data and all those things. So I'm like, you got to think about what your data is, and then how do you package it up to make it more, just like the publishers have had to do in the digital ecosystem, is they need to understand their data because they have to put a value on their inventory and their ability to deliver audiences on those particular, on their inventory. And I encourage the traditional TV space to do that, because data should be much more informative than, your standard Nielsen rating. Of course, Nielsen is still the currency. I'm not discrediting that by any sense of the imagination, but I think a publisher, or not a publisher, but a broadcaster like an NBC, for example, should really know what audiences they're capturing and delivering, and should start to put some monetary value against that. And what they perceive to be the monetary value, and what I'm going to come and tell them that the monetary value is, maybe two different things, but it then allows us to have an exchange and a conversation about, what are you seeing, what is the data that you see, and this is the data that I see, just like we did in the digital ecosystem. So yeah, there's lots of commonalities or other players that could help assimilate all of that, but I think it's really core to them to make sure that they're taking a really provocative approach around their data, and NBCU is in the place to do that. And
more than others, because
I think so.
Because
and it may just be that they are more vocal about it to us.
Okay.
But I do think that they're trying. It's still, again, it's still early days, but it goes back to exactly what we just started at the beginning of the conversation. They packaged their upfront based on audiences. They didn't package it based on channel, and that. I'm sure that was like, they start preparing for the upfront a year before the upfront, right? But I'm sure, that took a lot of tenacity for the people who believed in that to get that to the front of the table, and to have a 1 hour upfront or 2 hour upfront, which is much shorter than they normally do, and to say, we're going to package it by audiences, and we're going to have Liz Hurley try and explain programmatic by making it analogous to fly fishing.
I like that.
It was really funny.
That was good.
So, yeah, it's. I think it's exciting.
One last question. So the upfront's going on right now. What kind of activity you think you might see? Obviously, it takes a long time to put some of these deals together. Do you think there'll be? They did say they were open to this. Will there be a few deals? Someone.
I think it's going to be a few first mover deals that we'll be able to do.
Okay.
And we'll have to prove them out dramatically.
Okay.
But I think we also have demonstrated that we're trying to shift the marketplace in the conversation. Obviously, Magna's big commitment to YouTube is a message to the market that we're starting to think differently, and we want to change the marketplace.
Got it. Okay. Give Erica a nice, warm applause here in the morning.
Thank you very much, Erica. Thanks,
Thank
Wayne.
you. Thank you, Wayne.
Thanks.
A reminder, everyone, that we're live stream-sized agencies, often serving around a number of the regions in the U.S. Steve Parker and his Level Wing is a good example of that. It's a Charleston-based agency named the fastest-growing company in Charleston.
I don't know about that.
Oh, you don't know about that?
Boeing's
Actually,
based there, and Mercedes has big companies there.
But he's going to walk us through several case studies that illustrate how and why they've gotten into advanced TV. Please welcome Steve Parker.
Good morning. My team, I tend to ramble, so my team says, please, when you go there, have notes, so I have notes. In analog format. But I want to thanks to MediaPost for having me. It's been a while since I've been at a conference. You guys can hear me better there, right? Since I've been at a conference that I think is well planned and thought out. I don't know how many of you all attend, but I think this is a good group. And it's also there aren't many conferences that they have people come in and speak that aren't being forced to pay to speak. So I commend you guys for that, to have really good content. And I think that's shown the last couple days. We've had a lot of fun talking to people the last 2 days, and I think probably all of you all have as well. I've enjoyed the conversation, and I think it's clear that there's a lot to figure out. I think even in Erica, some of the questions or some of the things she was talking about with Wayne, there's a lot of change going on. There's still a lot to figure out, and I think that's great that we can all be part of it. The one thing that I've noticed, and when I talked to Steve about what kind of content do you want me to present, he said, well, it's a TV and video conference. If you have any video, that'd be great. Not one single piece of creative has been shown this whole time. So I'm going to show 5, right? So it's Saturday morning. Why not, right? So I don't know how do I hit the green button, Jeff? All right, the big green button. There we go. We're good. So why am I here? So when Steve and I first spoke about the context of why we might speak, and he said he reached out because it was interesting that there's some mid-sized agencies. So we were a smaller or mid-sized agency, if you will. He reached out and said, Steve, you've been deeply involved with programmatic TV for a while, and why don't you come tell people why? And as large media agencies exist, of course, I think there's a very clear reason why they're doing it, because things are changing and they want to stay involved in the forefront. But I said, yeah, I can come do that. And so then we decided on the topic, don't overthink PTV, how and why we got started. So as uncomfortable as it is for me to talk about myself, I'm going to talk about myself for a while and our company. I'm not pitching you, I swear to God. But I think it's important to understand the context of why we moved into television in some regard, clearly from a digital perspective, being a purely digital agency, if you will. So I'm not going to provide you with gory details and guts and talk about technology and platforms, but I am going to go through a few case studies. There'll be 2 from Gildan USA, which is a basic wear company, 1 for a small travel organization in the Pacific Northwest, and then 1 for a brand called Red Cap. So that's what's up. That's what we're going to cover. There are a lot of details that can be shared, but I think today, what I hope to really cover, and if you get anything out of this, it's just to, encourage you to continue a commitment to PTV, because I think the change and the innovation that's being created here is really fascinating, and also to dig deeper and test, and also really just purely don't overthink it too much, because there's a lot you can do to overthink it. So in line with don't overthink it and how I got started, I'll give you some background. So me, myself, and I, some of you have gotten to know me a little bit and probably know this, but I'm Steve Parker Jr. I'm 42. I'm married. I got 2 kids. That's my gang. And not the guy that I have a gun pointed to his head. That's one of our creative guys. So you got to keep those guys in line. But I was talking with Erica last night, and I said, what do we? Thank you. What do I do all day? And I made an intentional decision a couple years ago not to be involved in the guts of any of our campaigns and details and let our team really, truly do their job. I tended to have a bad habit of derailing them as a founder of a company. So I've really committed to communicating well, being intentional, driving innovation and performance in the business, and in a very general and generic sense, and give people the right tools and things they need to be successful. So, each day I do focus on those both personally and professionally. And so in this industry, I started in 1995, working for a Fortune 500 company. That led to a semi-cable television startup that got acquired by News Corporation, so another Fortune 500 company. And then I was living in New York at the time, and then did 2 companies that were IPO startups. And then in 2002, started Levelwing and been able to do some really fun things. We've done 9 consecutive Super Bowl campaigns, and so I get to be involved in some really fun, new, exciting projects and really innovative things. But so what, right? So along the way, we built a good business that has allowed us to innovate, and as part of that, we saw lots of opportunities to get involved with other businesses. So we started a VC firm that recently raised $30 million. So if you know anyone that wants an investment like Samba TV or someone, we could consider that. But I think the innovation that comes out of these startups is really exciting, and that's a lot of what has led us to continue to innovate in the media side of our business. So even though I don't know really the guts of programmatic TV, certainly our media team does. I'll be honest in that there are details that they know better than I. However, I want to share my experiences and show you what we've learned, through the last couple of years as we've gotten deeper into programmatic. So the one thing I've really learned that I'm good at, and I've helped our team become really good at, is being flexible. And I think one of the things that's really important in this particular conversation is that we remain flexible, since there are so many things to figure out, and continue to communicate really well. So we've done a good job of that as a company, but when MediaPost said, why don't we get started, a lot of it had to do with being really flexible and trying new things a lot, and then being able to communicate that really well. So, with that, I think we'll dive into a few case studies and show you guys what we've learned thus far. So, Gildan is a basic wear company. They make socks, underwear, and t-shirts. Anyone here know their product? You wear their product? Great, that's awesome. They would love to know that. They're a brand that, they're a national brand. Of course, they're sold at many retailers, Walmart, Target, Kohl's. When we started talking to them about programmatic TV, it was in 2013, early in the year, and their CMO said, look, can we test a few things and find out how this would perform for us? They have decent budgets, but they're, of course, competing with Fruit of the Loom and Hanes, which are large brands that have quite a few dollars to spend. And so they were looking for some efficiencies, and they were looking to do something different in the marketplace. So in 2013, we launched a campaign, and we actually leveraged really every possible video asset that could be leveraged at one time for this testing purposes. Of course, linear TV, connected devices, Roku, Apple TV. One of the guys was talking the other day about the guy with the accent, I forget his name. But he was talking a lot about some of the apps and how they function. So, of course, within those apps like Crackle and Great Chefs, Kung Fu Theater and whatnot, these ads ran. And then also an online and mobile video, all from one platform. And we have chosen, for now at least, to use TubeMogul as our primary partner there, and they've been really great at helping us through this process. But as you can see here, the target was millennial males, 18 to 34, in this first test, or phase, if you will, with a layer also of household income of 50 to 100K. So why do we do this? We just wanted to test multiple video locations on the same plan, and also consider future reallocation of budgets if we could find efficiency. So that was the primary purpose of this. And as you can see from a results perspective, we had a 20% reduction in CPMs versus the traditional plan. Now, mind you, this initial test was very much a smaller segment of budget, so we weren't sure if that would continue to derive the same results at scale, but you'll see how we found that out shortly. We did do mid-campaign optimizations in this process that reduced our target rating point by 30 to 35%, depending on channel. So that was extremely effective for us. And then I should also note that during the initial phase, we optimized away from connected TV because although viewability was 100%, costs were much more expensive to reach that audience than we anticipated. I'll also mention we had a cost per minute viewed metric, which I don't know how much value we necessarily put on that because it's just something else to look at. But it was interesting that programmatic TV outperformed both online and mobile pre-roll video in this initial test. So it was just something to note. I'll show you if I just hit this button, will this play?
Go ahead.
We'll try it. Nope, it didn't. So just real quickly,
ladies and gentlemen, the case
this is the ad that we originally ran in this initial test.
Take your place. 12 swords, sharper like razor blades. I will now insert the first blade.
No, stop! Okay, continue.
So that was so that ran, the same ad ran in every single placement that we executed because we wanted to have, similar basis for which to judge everything. And they also did a brand study at the same time, so we didn't want to screw that up. But then when we moved into phase 2, so throughout 2014, we continued to test a few things. And then in 2015, the client really committed to go very heavily and invest more heavily in programmatic TV, as well as online and digital video, just in general. And they also hired Blake Shelton. So he's a cool guy if you ever meet him. He's much shorter than I thought and much thinner. So he says he's 6'5". I think he's like 6'3". He wears boots. But we had, over the year last year, we had 3 seasonal flights. We did, A/B split tests on media for both to find efficient. We used efficient, what we call just lower tier networks, and then also some premium networks as well. On the premium side, we had a day parting focus as part of it. But on the efficient media plan buy, we dropped day parting altogether and just said, look, how inexpensive can we get this media and still reach our core base target? And you'll see here that there were a few different targets. So for spring, it was primarily women 18 to 34 with layers of arts and crafts in the stores they shopped in, like Walmart and Kohl's and whatnot. For Father's Day, it was also women 25 to 54 that were married with children and also the stores they shopped. And then on back to school, it was a broader audience of adults 18 to 34 which stores they shopped, as well as women 30 to 54 that were moms and also what stores they shopped. So, why do we do this? I mean, we wanted to increase reach beyond their traditional TV plan. So they still have a more traditional firm in New York that buys their media in general, that's non-digital and also the non-programmatic stuff. So we wanted to make sure that we had reach beyond that traditional plan and also have flexible ways of moving budget around from placements. And so when we made this initial plan, we had a certain budget that was set for programmatic TV, and we tested connected TVs again just to see if that same thing held true, which it did, and so we dropped that part of the way in. And then also through all the online video formats, and just where was the most efficiency it reached in our target market. And we continue to move dollars around, and we continue to find really impressive value, if you will, on the programmatic TV front. So you can see here we saw efficiencies at reaching our core demo, which was just basically if it was women or adults in their ages, using the efficient tier. But on the premium network side, and when we optimized that to a lower cost, we were able to find a lot of advantages as well. So when we looked at our core demo, and so just based on demographics on age and male or female, the efficient networks were 11% more effective on a targeted rating point. However, on the strategic audience, when we would layer in arts and crafts or stores they shopped, the premium networks outperformed the efficient buys by 20% on a targeted rating point. So it was really interesting data for our team, our media team, to see. There's a similar plan just like this that's live now for Gildan. So if you see their ads, it's most likely running from this perspective. I'll mention that based on that phase 1 and that phase 2 test, that going forward, the client has moved significant dollars from their traditional TV budget into digital television and video formats that include a significant amount of programmatic TV for what their budget is, as well as online and mobile formats. So for them, we've seen that we've been able to extend our ability, our spend ability, depending on channel, by anywhere from between 25 to 37% without an increase in budget by taking the budgets and moving them to more efficient media placements. For me, that does really truly define flexibility and performance, and I like the flexibility part of it. And it's good to, as you guys know, that our agencies, it's great to have a client that allows you to be a little more flexible than normal. Because Shirley,
at Kyle 24 writes,
like,
hey Blake, how many stars does Gildan underwear get? Good question, Kyle. Gildan underwear is made right, looks right, and feels right. It gets one big star that you can trust. It's like 6'5", comes from Oklahoma, sings pretty good, has a tattoo that kind of looks like deer tracks. Not all stars are perfect, Kyle. Gildan, every thread counts.
This guy's really fun to hang out with, by the way. And he drinks a lot. But I've never seen him drunk. I just know he drinks. So that ad ran during phase 1 and phase 2, and you may even see that on TV now. And then kind of give you a little bit of a world premiere. So this next ad launches in programmatic TV, actually, I think this weekend. It's been running online for about a week or so. Here we go. I'll let you guys do it.
It's pretty simple. If you like how it sounds, you keep singing it. If you like how it's done, you keep doing it. If you like how it fits, you keep wearing it. Keep playing
songs, keep singing along, keep leaning it on in closer.
How many of you guys have like been on sets filming commercials before? Like this kind of stuff. It's so much fun. It's like that's what you want to do all day long, right? So also in programmatic, so Gildan has a sizable budget, but we also have run campaigns for brands that are small and have extremely, I would say, light budgets, for lack of a better term. The next case study is Tualatin Valley, Oregon. So it's a DMO. It's essentially the area outside of Portland, Oregon. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with the area, but you know, what we wanted to do is we wanted to focus on reaching travelers in a 600-mile drive radius for this brand. We'd been all digital for a few years since their travel brand. They've always been very heavily invested in digital, more so than most brands. And some of that was online video, but they had never done TV. They just felt it was, you know, something that maybe wasn't possible for them. So this is actually a campaign that is a more recent one. It just launched last week. But I wanted to show just sort of approach and what we're focusing on. So the target demos adults 25 to 54 with a strategic target that's vacation travelers. The reason we decided to move forward with them and use some of their budget from testing from this perspective was that Travel Oregon and Visit Portland both have significant media budgets compared to Tualatin Valley, of course. And we wanted to make sure that we could ride those coattails in the markets where that they were running their ads. So it's not like it's competitive conquesting. I mean, they were very open in sharing us which markets they were in and what they were doing with pricing not attached to it. They felt a little protective of that, but we were able to tag along and find out, could we still have an impact with the association and that they're building for the state of Oregon and Portland, and given the fact that if you want to go to Tualatin Valley, which is literally 15 minutes outside of the city limits of Portland, how can we tag along with that the best we could? So the results, I mean, it's a live campaign, so we don't have, and literally it went live last week, so I don't have true results like we saw X performance and efficiency so far. But the things I can show you and share is, we have 35% of the impressions are being delivered in prime time, and then there's 16 total networks that include everything from Animal Planet to ESPN and the Travel Network and so on and so forth, or Travel Channel and so forth. And then, they filmed their video. They typically film like these 3-minute long stories, and so we just took a portion of it and cut it to create the ad. They had hired a guy to come in and actually was like a documentary filmmaker to make this adventure from a family from Wisconsin. It's a made-up story about their experiences in the Tualatin Valley. So, Jeff, I don't know if you guys can hit play because it doesn't work for me up here. It'll take 1 second. Yep.
My family and I are on the best Lejeski family vacation ever. This year, we decided to go to Oregon's Tualatin Valley. They've got something for everyone here. Amazing wineries, a spectacular 50-mile scenic bikeway, tons of stuff for the kids. Talk about great food, international cuisine from all over the world. Go plan your adventure at tualatinvalley.org.
So Nike's based there in Beaverton, is one of the cities that's in the Tualatin Valley. It's fun. I mean, it'd be interesting to see how this one performs. But again, it's a client that has this sub-$1 million budget that needs to be extremely efficient because they don't have a lot of dollars to really to play with. But I think we'll see some really good performance based on what we've allocated so far and what we're testing. And then I'll jump into another brand here called RedCap. RedCap is owned by VF Corp. You guys are probably more familiar on the consumer side with the brands that VF Corp owns. This is a workwear brand that's been around for a long time. It's really truly in many regards a lifestyle brand, but it's been heavily focused on the B2B segment of automotive workers, so people that work in literally like in a Pep Boys or in a Firestone Complete Auto Care or Sears Automotive, they wear this gear. But also people that are of that people that are automotive enthusiasts and truly like rebuilding their cars and motorcycles and those sort of things also tend to gravitate towards this type of gear and workwear. So, like I said, they've been around a long time. We're currently about to initiate a new program with them for construction wear as well, to focus on construction workers, because they have a lot of distribution through that channel. And we'll probably test something in programmatic TV there as well when those creative are done. But this is an audience that's tough to reach via mass market, and it's a really kind of super niche audience. So we need to be very strategic and precise. This is also a live campaign. I mean, right now, there's the media from a results perspective, if you will. It's 37% prime time, 37% daytime. We have aggressive CPMs. You know, as you can see here, it's about $6.98 currently on the strategic demo and indexing. But we have optimized this far, because it's been live longer than a week, of course, to increase the strategic audience reach by 28% since launch by moving around through different channels and networks. So, you know, I think we're going to see a lot of success out of this campaign as well. Again, just further illustrating the point that I think we've been able to find a really great opportunity in this programmatic TV segment, even though there's still a lot of things to figure out. So, you know, you can see all the targets here. I won't read it to you. But I will, you know, quickly show their ad that's currently running live as well.
Whether you fix, build, race, or live, only Red Cap workwear is geared for the garage, proven by pros, and designed with purpose. And we've been doing it since 1923. And only Red Cap offers a clear advantage, the Red Cap Advantage. To get the full story, go to redcapauto.com/redcapadvantage.
So, you know, I think getting started, you know, in this, and a lot of you clearly have already done this, but, you know, getting started in programmatic, I think TV is fairly straightforward. You know, you just identify a budget, define sort of your targets. You know, define what success metrics you want to track and measure to. I think we've heard a lot about that over the last couple of days, like how are you going to measure it? I think we've just taken what's the most basic common denominator we can find, and let's do a lot of testing. Even though some of the budgets have increased significantly and gone beyond testing at this point, it's how do we keep it reasonably simple without overcomplicating it, because I think one of the things we also heard the last few days is we can complicate the shit out of this if we want to. Because clearly those of us that have been purely in digital for the last 20 years have learned to really complicate stuff and make it difficult. So I would hope that we don't go too far down that path. And then really, you know, the last slide here, I saw this from our partner at 2Mobile, and we talked a lot about the slide internally for a while one day, and it was recent, so I liked it. And I thought I would share it, but it's, you know, and you all probably even know this better than I, those of you who've been involved in TV a long time, but, you know, there's heavy exposure in that first quintile for people that are heavy consumers of television media. But I believe that, you know, the programmatic side where we've spent, I think where a lot of these dollars are being spent, are in these lower quintiles that are, you know, new, where you can find new opportunities to reach people in niche areas. And I think that's also what has also driven historically a lot of the innovation on the digital side through programmatic media buying as well. So, you know, even though I'm a pure digital guy at heart, I do believe that TV is still the best way to effectively and quickly reach and build a brand. So I think this is just a new method, of course, for us to be able to execute against that well and operationalize it. So if there's any takeaways, I'd say be really flexible. I think without flexibility, it's hard to find performance in this area. You know, find the incremental reach opportunities, and then also just, you know, really just don't overthink it. There's my contact info. If you know someone who wants to move to Charleston that's new into the industry, I'll take them. But, you know, have them email me. But any questions?
Thank you, Steve. Any questions? Steve, actually, in about half an hour, Steve is going to be running the roundtable on not overthinking programmatic TV. So you can save them to talk to him personally. Thanks, Steve, very much for coming out. Let me ask Samantha and Jennifer to come on up. And we're going to round out this morning by doing a bit with addressable TV, what we did yesterday with OTT, and sort of doing a bit of a level set on where we are, where that is as a platform. Let me ask our dive in. And first, introduce yourselves. Give us a little background about your respective companies.
I'm Samantha Stecker. I'm the Director of Media Strategy and Innovation at Ocean Media, which is an independent media planning buying agency in Southern California that kind of specializes in ROI, performance-based DR for primarily e-commerce clients. So Priceline, Care.com, Ebates, Realtor, eHarmony. Yeah.
Where are you in the process of adopting or looking into addressable?
So my role was actually created to specifically focus on emerging media and kind of advances in TV. So addressable and programmatic TV specifically, and kind of data and technology and how they're changing the way we need to look at, plan, buy television. For most of our accounts, we are in the education and testing phase because there's a lot of confusion about what is addressable versus unwired versus advanced audience targeting versus programmatic. So trying to understand what all of these different areas are, who all the different players and partners are, and then really kind of testing and what makes sense, because it's not a one-size-fits-all, especially for things like addressable, which we're talking about today.
Okay. And Jennifer, tell us about 8451.
Sure, good morning. I am Jennifer Polino. I am the Vice President of Omnichannel Media for 8451. I'll clear up first what the weird name is all about. 8451 actually pinpoints the longitudinal coordinates of our headquarters in Cincinnati. We are a wholly owned subsidiary of Kroger, which is where all of our data comes from. As you might know, Kroger is kind of a behemoth in the retail industry. It's the #2 grocery worldwide retailer and #2 retailer in the U.S. And what we do is we take and harness all of that data. We have 60 million households that we have the data on, which is over half of the households within the U.S. It's single source data, and we are able to use that data to connect exposures or online to offline, and understand what the purchase intent and what they're actually purchasing in store. So you can get a true uplift and a true return on investment. Our only focus is on CPG. So that would be my
formerly, or maybe not strictly formally, but it was a spin-off or a transformation of dunnhumby.
It is.
Right.
Yeah, we had a joint venture. dunnhumby was a joint venture between Kroger and Tesco in the U.S. We split off of that joint venture about a year ago, and Kroger bought us wholly outright.
Okay. So Samantha, let's start with you. Since you're at that stage, that education stage that we're trying to do here, tell us how you are. A couple of things. How you're scoping out and defining the landscape in addressable, what it is, what's available. As you alluded to, distinguishing some of the terms and teasing out what the hell this is in comparison to some of these other platforms. But it's one of the things we've seen in the last 3 days here is a lot of terminology clutter.
Agreed. There are a lot of buzzwords out there. The definition is kind of based on whoever has the mic in their hand, so you're going to get my definition today. I'm happy to be on the addressable panel because I think it's one of the more clear opportunities that we're really talking about here, because it's really based on technology and this idea of being able to serve ads only to the households that you've defined as most important. That said, the definition is based on this whole advanced audience targeting we've been talking about, really understanding who your consumer is, but you either can do that because you have the technology and infrastructure to only serve ads to those households, down to the household level, or not. So I think it makes it a little bit cleaner in that sense. But again, I think a lot of what we've been talking about with kind of targeting and advanced audiences kind of obviously plays in as the backbone to all of this. So it's actually when we kind of go through the new ecosystem and we toss up the charts that everyone's been tossing up with the kind of Lumascape, it's the easier one to understand if you have the technology and you can do this, and it's kind of environment agnostic. So it really is about who is the audience. Okay, I'm going to use data to understand who that is and serve ads only to those households.
And define. And it's important to note. I think Mitch brought this up yesterday when he was doing his case study and moving across platforms. The limitations and advantages of defining by household.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're using all of this data, whether it's first party or third party data, and you're defining a household, but there's more than one person in every house. So you have that household with, a male with a household income of X who owns a dog and buys this type of a car, but his wife also watches TV, his child also watches TV, his neighbor might be over watching TV. So you have to take a little bit of, I think, leniency when it comes to, it's not one-to-one targeting, you're targeting an entire household, and understanding the presumed waste of everyone else in the household when you're kind of putting these campaigns together. But I think that's why kind of testing and measurement, which I know we'll talk about in a little bit, is so important to make sure that the definition you're using is actually translating to results above increased reach or increased impression delivery to an advanced target, because if it doesn't move the business, then why did you just pay a premium to do it?
And just in scoping out the inventory, who's doing it? Who are the major providers, the nature of the inventory, and scale, available scale now?
Yeah, so I mean, addressable right now is in a third of households, so that's about 43 million, and it might seem small, only 33%, but it's 33% that are seeing your ad, right? So there are a lot of networks that are in a lot more households that no one is watching or no one is actually seeing your ads. I think the primary players are really DirecTV and Dish, who have that, technology at the set-top box level when it comes to linear. Time Warner, Comcast, some of the other MVPDs are really playing in the VOD space, so day 4+, which definitely has value because the person's seeing your ad and content they chose to see, but it's just a little bit of a different environment than you might be used to.
Jennifer, you want to complement that in terms of how you're seeing and defining the space, but also then how you're starting to define audiences in this space.
Sure. With our data, I always like to say we're kind of like the buns of a sandwich, right? We help to do the targeting on the upfront, and then we do on the back end, we measure it to help advertisers, agencies optimize their plans. And so that allows any of the CPGs to use any publisher that they want, any partner that they want. And because we have that single source closed loop area, we can measure those same households across. So it's not a lookalike household, it's that actual household. And so you get really granular measurement. So we're seeing a lot of brands, their main concerns are, right, are we driving consumers with this advertising that we are customizing into the store? Are they purchasing? What are the loyal consumers doing? Are we stealing share from our competitors? And who are those people that are actually buying it? And of those people that are actually buying, not only what is their profile, but what is the frequency of which they are seeing that ad, and what is driving it to that most positive, to the positive uplift. And so you take a look at that landscape, and then you start getting down to what types of metrics and what types of categories that really should be taking a look at these audiences. So say you have a pet food company and they sell dog treats and they want to have different audiences and different creatives. You have the ability on this addressable to find those households. So households who have a pet that are not buying a dog treat, households that have a dog that are buying a dog treat but not buying your dog treat, or say there's households that are having a pet buy dog treats and switch between yours and somebody else's. You can get that granular down to the level of those particular households, serve them that customized advertising, and then understand what the cuts on the back end are, how the reaction was to those.
What are you seeing early in about the uses of that kind of data? Are they using it for conquesting to map out people who are not buying the dog treats? Are they using it as a kind of CRM or retargeting people who they know are already buying their brand and they want to keep them in the brand loop?
What we do, we mainly are seeing campaigns from brands, as we call them, brand building campaigns, where people are interested and I want lapsed buyers or I want switchers, or if there's a newer product into a category, maybe it's a semi-niche category that addressable would be good for in this particular case, they would use this advertising to get more people aware of the product that would be more likely to buy it because they might have been in the category before.
And we should explain, and again, I'm sure most people know, that we're talking about inventory that's 2 minutes an hour within the local avails that these these providers have. So one of my questions has to do with locality and how much of, and how much of the targeting has to do with locality and is going on at that level? Well, both of you. Yeah,
Okay, I was just going to mention, so in a lot of these campaigns, right, most of the CPGs, because of the very nature of addressable and them getting into that particular type of medium, they're doing a lot of testing, right? So so not only can you look at those maybe say lapsed buyers, you can also look at it with lapsed buyers now around a certain retail environment in which your product is distributed. So you have that. So you can just like stack and layer the type of granularity that you're getting on there. The only thing that you really need to be cautious of is the scale of addressable right now. So there's enough inventory of those consumers that you have that you're going to reach to maximize the value that you're going to be paying, because it is a premium.
Yeah,
I think we heard that yesterday, that there's, kind of this range, the 5 to 30, 35%, where at a certain point you've just gotten too niche, it's not going to pay out. And on the other end, it makes more sense just based off the economies of everything to just kind of eat a little bit of the waste. So I think that sizing the audience is really important, which means defining the audience is really important. I think you hear like 2 minutes an hour, it's not a lot of inventory, but if you run one spot an hour nationally, what's the difference between being in this 2 minutes that no consumer actually knows is the 2 minutes of local time? And with the marketplace right now and just kind of the tightening of national inventory, sometimes there's just more opportunity in those 2 minutes. There's more inventory there than there is outside of it that you can really kind of play in and try to leverage.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a little bit about, characterize this marketplace. How is this stuff being bought and sold, and what are the constraints on inventory?
Right, so you're buying a household that's being defined by an audience, right? So you're not buying a network, you're not buying a day part, you're buying a house and you want the person to see it. You have the benefits of being able to do things like frequency cap, which is nice, but that's why I think the audience and the target is so important, and what data are you putting behind that to understand it? And we saw the example yesterday of like the really vague definition that you sometimes get. So I think it's important to have a really clear understanding of who your target is, understanding of how partners are identifying those households, what's the size there, and then A/B testing, I think, is the only way to make this type of media work, because you need to understand if paying this premium and the way you've defined your target is actually resulting in business results above kind of your media performance, impressions delivery to that target. So I think that's definitely one of the key aspects to this whole thing.
Did you want to add?
No, I mean, you said it best. It's about the person and not the program, right? It's kind of what you're buying. You're really getting that focus.
And we don't have to worry as much in this space about standardization, because we're only talking about a couple of providers that are fairly standard. The ways in which the households are being defined is fairly standard across the two of them.
Yes, but I think that, depending on what data you're using or kind of layering on, you're going to get a different household. So I think that's kind of where things are different. There are so many different partners for viewership or audience data, so many different partners for purchase or sales data, obviously the best sitting right next to me. But, it's really kind of those different data providers are going to give you a slightly different output, which I think is really important to understand. I think the other key here and really opportunity for us, as a lot of what we've been talking about this weekend is looking forward and what does the future hold, and like we can see it so clearly, let's get ahead of it. If you have these network partners like we just talked about who are going to start selling on an advanced target and guaranteeing on an advanced target, and they're talking about it in this upfront, a couple of big multi-million-dollar partners probably playing in that space, but eventually it's going to be potentially the new currency or just the new way media is transacted. Addressable gives you an opportunity to really test that and understand who your target is, because I'm not going to go put a multi-million-dollar upfront together against a target that I have no idea if that's really who my target is, if they're going to react any differently. So there's definitely an opportunity to try to do that now in this space and just get ahead of where things are coming if it does ever move to kind of a national platform.
How is pricing in this space?
Expensive.
Okay.
You're paying premiums. The more niche your targets get, the more layers of data you're adding, you're driving up that CPM. But I think that the way we look at it, and Eric from GoDaddy kind of said the same thing, I'm willing to pay double the CPM if it means I'm getting 4 times the results on the back end, and if it's driving the business, kind of pay to play mentality. And so I think measuring whether or not that premium is worthwhile is kind of the key to understanding it. And again, like at a certain point, is that premium not worthwhile because there's waste? And who is your category? I mean, if you're trying to reach people 18 plus with a credit card, arguably there's no need for you to do addressable if you're just trying to do reach and awareness, then go national, get that $15, $20 national cable CPM. I think the testing opportunities there, especially with creative, have some good legs.
And I can add some color to that. We've obviously we do a measurement, so we've done a lot of measurement of these types of programs. And, just recently, we just measured one, so it's at the top of my mind, but, it was a $99 CPM off of the addressable for CPG company. But the return on investment or the return on ad spend, because of the incremental value that they received, was 13% incremental uplift to the brand. So that was pretty significant in a category that's really fragmented and a category that was doesn't have strong growth. So they were beating expectations of the category as well for that campaign, but they were beating it on average by 5 times. So, I mean, for them, the goal for them is now that they're going to continue to add in addressable into their plans. Not obviously 100%, but it's that balance of mix of, where the awareness is and the smaller or the lower cost inventory versus really valuable inventory to pinpoint that.
And are you seeing examples of what Samantha was talking about, with some of that is testing and getting a better sense of who your target is? They're getting data feedback that's helping to inform their other campaigns out of this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because we have a benchmark, right, of, just of all the different types of mediums that we have, what we're seeing on average for addressable is about an 8% brand uplift per campaign, which is pretty good when I compare it to some of the campaigns that we're seeing on online video, which we're only seeing about a 2% brand uplift on average. And again, that varies between category and whatnot, but that's kind of the averages that we're seeing. But I think that, and everybody's, going baby steps, and I think that that's a great thing to do, and, test and learning their way into it. So those types of examples, and that the continued learning, but also continued learning for companies like myself that can help, define these benchmarks and help provide that knowledge out to the rest of the marketplace is really valuable. And the only other thing I would say too is that we're also doing a lot of test and learn for these types of campaigns on the longevity of the campaign. So right, there's always, like on linear TV, right, we always like the halo effect, or what is this from an equity standpoint doing for your brand. But with addressable, what we're actually seeing is the longevity is there, and it's even to a greater degree than what we normally see on other campaigns. So we do a 4-week post campaign, and we give the uplift, like I just gave it that as example, but we're also doing testing on a 26-week basis to see what those consumers who are exposed to that ad versus weren't. Everything we do is like test and control, and because we know those individuals that we had that were exposed in the first place, we can look at it from a longer term perspective, and we're seeing ranges between a sustained uplift on that 26-week period from 5% to 10%, which is phenomenal.
How does frequency, you're thinking about frequency, how is it impacted in this channel? Is it different?
It is. We're actually seeing the targets getting like a higher frequency, which you're pinpointing exactly who you want to. So we're seeing we've actually seen better uplift off of like the higher frequencies, because you're hitting that right target. So we're seeing maybe between a sweet spot on mobile. Again, it could be targeted, untargeted, but between 5 and 6, where we're seeing it on addressable between about 10 and like 15.
So the greater the relevance, the higher the tolerance, actually, for the same message. So, I want to come back and tease out your point about creative. What are some of the creative challenges and opportunities here on addressable?
Right. Well, I mean, usually addressable is going to be a complement to what you're doing with your national TV schedule, and you're increasing your frequency, so there's kind of a higher propensity for wear out, which is, I think, something to keep in mind. Yes, they're your valuable customer, but do they want to see the same spot 15 times? Probably not, unless it's really good. And I also think that, the beauty of digital is you have these targets, and you potentially have more creative that you can play with, and there's, kind of algorithm machine learning that's optimizing towards which creative is working best. You don't really have that opportunity with addressable TV. You know, you can run creative tests or do different campaigns with different creative to see what works, but it's kind of happening over time, not in real time based off of responses. And in an ideal world, if you're reaching a really specific target, you should have a creative message that works for them. So I think is your brand just by its nature really targeted, so the spot you're running nationally is the exact spot you want this consumer to see? Or have you kind of created a segment within your overall reach or awareness play that should be served to different ads, and do you have a budget to create something specifically for them? Because obviously the cost behind creative for TV is different typically than the cost for what you're doing online or in mobile. So I think it's definitely something to keep in mind, is if your creative is going to resonate more or less with this target. And then I think keeping in mind, what is that frequency? Because yes, you have an addressable campaign, but you probably also have a national campaign that addressable is really an overlay to. How are the two playing together? And is that really paying out in terms of hitting them?
Right, because ultimately you could be adding up to a lot of frequency.
Exactly. I think frequency
between
capping,
your national and your addressable, right?
Yeah, I think frequency capping your addressable is a smart move, because the ad can be shown a certain number of times and then turned off. So if you know the average frequency of your national campaign, say 3, then cap your addressable at 3, so then it's 6 and not a ton. Or if there's a way to kind of pulse it or run different creative for your addressable than your national. I think those are important things to keep in mind.
Jennifer, are any of the campaigns that you've flown to the point where they're sophisticated enough or have enough budget to support specific creative for addressable?
We have
so you can start seeing those differences?
We have seen a couple, and mainly there's just really maybe two creatives, and they're just pretty much variations, right, depending upon, and I agree with the variation type of standpoint. So it's like one main creative, but maybe if you're looking at maybe a lapse buyer, you might, and that's your target, you might want to have the brand more up front. Whereas if it's like your loyal buyers and you're just trying to get them to increase more, then your message might be a little bit different. So, but it's along that same premise to have the synergies between everything else that you're doing in the ecosystem amongst regular linear TV and digital, which is really important.
Samantha, since a lot of your clients they're DR and a lot of them are based online, so you would be wanting to drive online traffic from this. Are you starting to see that link, or do you see how that link is made, where you're going to be able to use addressable to drive eyeballs online to your DR clients who are working principally on the web?
Yeah, most definitely. So, one of the things that Ocean kind of prides itself on is some of the proprietary technology we have to understand TV attribution really well, kind of above the baseline and what TV is doing from a network creative program standpoint. It's a lot harder with addressable when you are not in a national footprint and you don't know exactly where, when your creative is running. So that's going to be a little bit challenging. I think A/B testing is what kind of serves that purpose, because then you're looking for a lift in visits or whatever that kind of primary KPI is for your exposed households versus your unexposed, and that's how you're going to be able to kind of pay it out and understand if that target is working or not. I think everyone's kind of trying to understand, is there another way to be able to measure this without, A/B testing? Samba's playing in that space, some of the other partners out there, and we're, definitely interested in how do we understand kind of what the contribution or attribution is of all of this media. But for right now, I think it's A/B, exposed control, lift, especially if you don't have, brick and mortar metrics to be able to fall back on.
Okay. I want to move. If any of you had any questions, please shoot your hand up and ask. Although, can we get a mic?
Saturday morning question. I like it.
Balancing or weighting addressable and programmatic, I know you usually start out with one or the other for business objective reasons, but do you have any clients playing in the arena of what is the right blend between a programmatic, more targeted approach and a more premium addressable?
Yeah, absolutely. And part of it is, on the cost, right, of let's say the premium inventory. So we have a lot of clients, right? The range of clients you think of, basically it's anybody who's on the, on the store shelf that we actually have. So when we get to some of the bigger players, that we work with, like PepsiCo, General Mills, Unilever, those are the clients that are in P&G that are grappling with the fact that, okay, we have ubiquitous, reach on many of our products and many of our brands, and linear TV is probably the better way to go to there. But we want to also go to a more personalized approach. So what's that balance in between? So we're seeing a lot of testing between what's the right balance of like a programmatic for like the reach versus something that's really pinpointed, and is it better to pay that premium off of a, say, purchase-based target?
Let's move on to the challenges here. Scale. I mean, 2 minutes an hour, handful. You've got. So tell me, does that solve itself, or how does one achieve? First of all, scale for your target within that limited inventory. But what are the prospects for that inventory expanding?
Right. So I mean, it's in its infancy, as is most of what we've been talking about this weekend. So I think there is definitely opportunity for growth. Right now, you're talking a third of households. By end of the year, next year, it's supposed to be more like half households. So there's definitely growth. You see DirecTV and AT&T merging. So trying to get kind of that infrastructure and technology in place. But I think that a lot of the providers out there, some of the MVPDs, they see the value in this, and it's just about kind of upgrading those boxes and getting the technology there to make it grow. But even then, you're still working within those 2 minutes of inventory. As you have more advertisers trying to access that inventory, it's going to be limited. But I think that most partners are pretty good at giving you a realistic sense of what is that scale, what is that size, and how can I impact it. But I think that's definitely going to still be a challenge, as is, the measurement piece, which isn't so much as a challenge as much as really kind of thinking about how am I going to measure this to get, really clear results. Because sometimes, I'm going to get this great target, and I'm just going to run this addressable ad, and I'm going to show these great, impressions that I delivered, or the reach to this targeted person. But did that reach translate to anything on your business? Like, was there any actual impact besides more of my consumers saw my spot? If they didn't convert, then, what's the point? So I think that for more clients and brands to get comfortable with it, you have to be very clear about this is what we're going to do, and clear communication on this is how we're going to measure it. And success is going to be based off of X, Y, or Z, not just it's cool and it's shiny and we're going to do it. You're welcome, because that's just, you can do that, which is great if your clients are okay with that. But I think that we should be kind of increasing that level of communication that we're having about the opportunities here and the challenges, and being really straightforward about what you're talking about, who you're reaching, what you can do.
Okay. Did you want to?
It's not the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, right? For everything. I think it's we have to make sure that we have to integrate everything from a standpoint of not only understanding the brand's objectives, but where they want to grow and how they want to increase their position in the market and gain that awareness. And it is a more it is a balanced approach, but it's very difficult to do. So the diligence and the planning and the really precise knowledge of really who your consumer is and what type of message that you want to serve each of those precision type of audiences is really key. A lot of the times what we're seeing, or we see a lot, is this perception versus reality of what people think that their target is, but in reality that is not who's watching, who is being targeted and or who is actually purchasing your product. And so with this data and the light of, combining who the individual is that is actually buying with what medium that they best like to get served on, to see their advertisements is really key, and really a key juncture point, in this process that we're doing. And I will say is that you can certainly test and measure the addressable TV in it by itself and as a single channel, but it's really the cross-channel measurement is really where more people need to start going. And when you take a look at the cross-channel, you have to look at everything, in itself, and not only, in my case, you're looking not only at whatever different platform they're advertising on, but also to what are the in-store variables that are also affecting it. And without that granularity of the data and the who is most important, and not lookalikes, it's going to, it gets you a better playing field, because there is so much that still affects those individuals on an in-store basis that you kind of have to make sure that you control for.
Yeah, I think the last thing that I would add is I think the scale is going to come from taking the learnings of addressable and applying them to your national TV buying and planning, kind of cross-screen. Right now, if you understand your digital target really well, you can see if that translates to TV in this space, but also vice versa. If you're able to understand what works in TV, can you apply that to some of your other kind of offline digital channels or online digital channels and see if they work and if they translate? And so it's like, this is your catalyst to scale on some of these larger platforms and opportunities. So
there should be some natural affinity between addressable and mobile, right? Because a lot of mobile is being, there are a number of companies who are able to track and target mobile on that same household level. So there should be ways to knit those two screens together pretty well, and also even back-end measurement, know some of the behaviors that this may be causing both online and even shopping, right?
Yeah, I think there are a few opportunities out there now, whether you can kind of sparse out your addressable versus your national campaign, right? Because it's not the only thing running, it's not the only media you have reaching that household. So I think the key is, how do I understand if it's the addressable piece that helped move the needle, or if it's the national TV spot they saw, the radio ad they heard, the print ad print, cute, but is it these other marketing media channels that
print, cute, I love it,
that they hit, like what is that touch point that actually moved the needle? Like, what can I actually attribute to?
No, it just seems to me, you could do things like, you could do some really interesting combinations there with, say, for instance,
Absolutely.
the coupon apps that are able really to target down to the household level and complement that with addressable advertising.
And we've seen it all the time. And we can measure up to 14 different channels that you can take a look at with the same number of households that cut across. So what we have seen is that the layering effect still works, right? So, and it should be a complementary type of message on a creative side as well. So that type of data, is available. It's not as widespread anymore. It's not as widespread yet, but it is getting there.
Okay. Listen, Jennifer, Samantha, thank you very much for wrapping this for us. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And if you have additional questions for them, we're going to break to one of the two round tables that we're going to start in 1 second. Will be addressable TV. The other one will be Steve talking with you about how to get started and why to get started and how not to overthink PTV. But before I leave, thanks to all of you for some great input. A number of you also helped me. Pat Dunbar in particular, also Tim Hanlon, who wasn't here, helped a great deal in putting this program together and deciding who to talk to and recruiting some of you. We got a lot of good feedback, I think, ideas for the next show. I really welcome, because I'm sure we will be doing this again, hopefully at a time that's not right in the middle of the upfronts, but we'll be doing this again, and I would love to get your input about where we advance the conversation. That's the way we view a lot of these events, is we tend to do 1 or 2 of them a year in each category, and we regard them as conversations. So I love your input about what we should be doing next, in addition to, I think I took a great note from Steve, more video at a TV conference for sure. But also, finally, to thank our sponsors for their support. It's always brave for a sponsor to come in at a first-time event like this and support it. So special thanks to VideoAmp, to Via Media, 4C, Epiphany, TiVo Research, Dish, and Samba TV. And thanks to all of you for coming out. Great conversations over the last few days. Thanks very much. And we're going to break for roundtables now. We're going to do addressable.